worked hard to get the right Russian word. You think we got it?
You get it wrong.
I got it wrong.
It should be перезагрузка. And this says перегрузка, which means overcharge.
Well, we won't let you do that to us. I promise.
Yes, Democrats and their diplomacy with Russia and Putin. And I think they're completely in bed with Putin and the Ruskies. Every damn Democrat, that includes the news media, too. Anybody remember Barack Obama trying to navigate his way through the Putin waters? I want to hit refresh on that one, too. That was Hillary Clinton with the easy button. What a schmuck. What a horrible, terrible, bad Secretary of State she was. 2009, there she was with her Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, who has been at the table recently because the Soviets never go away. And she brought one of those red buttons that's supposed to say, like, easy. You know, it's like the easy button. What was that? Staples, the store. Staples, they have office supplies and stuff, and they had the TV commercial with the red button. And it's the easy button. And Hillary Clinton is such a nitwit that she brought that with her. Amazing stuff. And thought she was going to impress Sergei Lavrov, which is never going to happen. Not with Hillary Clinton, it's not. Remarkable stuff. And she said, oh, yeah, we worked very hard, the reset button. And we worked very hard. We had all our Russian experts work on translating the word. And Sergei Lavrov, who would, kill your dog and eat its head, said, you got it wrong. No, this says overcharge. Overcharge. So the geniuses in the Hillary State Department, with all their language skills from Harvard, got it tragically and embarrassingly, humiliatingly wrong. But that's the story of Hillary Clinton's life, isn't it? Just look at her marriage. Why don't you? Pretty amazing stuff. So we've got that. That was remarkable. Yes, sir. Yeah, we translated it. Look, it's in Cyrillic. It's Peragruska. No, it's not. And I want to get back to that, too, because Hillary Clinton is, well, I'd like to think, still an embarrassment to Western civilization in the United States of America and to American women everywhere and to marriage. Terrible, terrible embarrassment is she, And so they don't understand the idea. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean. So I got that. And then Barack Obama with his, Nobel Peace Prize and his masterful command of politics that the news media told us all about, because they were lying to us, as they so frequently do. So we've got that. We've got the dust-up happened on Friday afternoon, not too long after I left here, but before I did my television show at Newsmax on Friday night, which I assume you're all there for, 10 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax, and Chris Plant and the Right Squad. But we covered it there, and I look forward to getting back to it today because a lot going on here. The news media, they're soiling themselves again, as they're so fond of doing. Yes, they are. They're not on our side. Boy, are they not on our side at all. But the headline in the radical left-wing extremist Putin propaganda outlet, The Atlantic, left-wingers, not liberals, left-wingers. One of the grimmest days in American diplomacy. I'll share with you some of the grimmest days in American diplomacy as we go forward today. That's the Atlantic headline, one of the grimmest days in American diplomacy. I got to say, it's probably the grimmest day in Ukrainian diplomacy because Volodymyr Zelensky just put out a tweet on Friday evening, that Volodymyr Zelensky went into the Oval Office and detonated his diplomatic suicide vest. He blew himself up, diplomatically speaking, at a bare minimum. And then he flew very quickly, got the hell out of Dodge and out of the United States of America. Washington, D.C. is Dodge in this case, and flew to London. And you see, he met with the King Charles III. You see that? Who I've met and talked to. I explained a few things to him when I met him, the Washington National Cathedral many years ago now. Remarkable stuff. But he met with Keir, I like to call him Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, and they're sniveling around. Oh, no, What, the Americans aren't going to do everything for us forever and ever as they've done for generations out of their own pocket and their own blood and fortune and their sons and not ours because, we've got a military of 120 people and most of them are cross-dressers. It's Great Britain, known for their buggery. Buggery, as Winston Churchill once famously said of the British Navy, but that's not important now. Remarkable. And the radical left-wing extremists at Mediaite, another one. White House bars AP and Reuters from Trump-Zelensky meeting. Kicks out Russian state media reporter who snuck in. See, these commies, you got to look out for these commie state reporter from Russia, Putin's Russia. They're commies. The thing is, the Democrats and the commies in the Soviet Union and Putin's Russia, they've been growing closer and closer together for decades, for generations, for a great many years now. They go camping together. They share sleeping bags. And you don't want to know the rest, but I'll get into some of that. But the White House is controlling who goes into the Oval Office. Oh, that can't be allowed. But the Democrats, they're against that because they're counter-revolutionaries. The revolution is the American Revolution, and they are the counter-revolutionaries of the modern age. Yes, they are. Womp, womp, womp. Pro-Trump reporter Brian Glenn bashes Volodymyr Zelensky for not wearing a suit. Well, he's the president of a country meeting with the president of the United States in the Oval Office about hundreds of billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of human lives. He could consider sprucing up. What is that thing? That thing he was wearing on Friday. What is that, like swag from a restaurant? Is that like my friend Randy produces swag for restaurants and it looks like a great restaurant shirt that Volodymyr was wearing on Friday. It was one of those like a cotton pullover shirt. It's basically a T-shirt, but it has 3 buttons. Little button. I don't know what you call that. I'm not a haberdasher, but from your chin down there are 3 buttons to open it up a little bit in case you're surfing that day or something. And he showed up at the White House. I recommended on Friday that President Trump should provide him with a gift pack of Trump ties, silk ties, because it would be funny. But Volod, because he's not Vlad. It's Volodymyr, not Vladimir. The news media keeps calling him Vladimir like it makes no difference. It does make a difference. It's Volodymyr. And Volod, he impaled his country's diplomatic future on his ego. Talk about the bonfire of the vanities on Friday and the diplomatic suicide vest that Volodymyr Zelensky detonated in the Oval Office, being petulant, should I say punk? I think being a punk, being ungrateful, being ungracious. I've got to say, I think his mother didn't raise him very well because my mother raised me to be more respectful and more considerate and more adult than Volod was. Can I call him Volod? Because I think he's peddling a Volod of stuff now. Amazing stuff. Yes, sir. Shocked by Trump meeting, Zelensky and Ukraine try to forge a path forward. The New York Times, that speaking of like Russian state media, they're not on our side at all. They're just a Democrat Party front group. They're shills for the left because John F. Kennedy, boy, if he were walking around today, they'd shoot him. The Democrats would. They're closer on the political spectrum to Lee Harvey Oswald today than they are to John F. Kennedy, and that's a fact check. So we've got that, and it's Volod, he don't want no stinking agreement with the United States. He just wants money, and he's got a list of demands. In fact, I saw another one today. He's got new demands for us. The arrogant, petulant individual. I'll try to keep it clean. Volodymyr Zelensky. He's got a new one today. Put out a statement. He says, "We're ready to sign the minerals agreement." Well, I guess you kind of blew that up then, didn't you? Now you're ready to sign the minerals agreement? Is that right? Because that's what he was at the White House to sign. And the truth is, President Trump is thinking long-term and long-term security guarantees for Ukraine and having the United States heavily invested in Ukraine, our government, industry, economically invested, very important for Ukraine when it comes to pushing back the commie horde to their north. That'd be Putin and Moscow and Russia. And President Trump knows that once the United States is involved with Ukraine in the way that this minerals deal would create a relationship, then we're very heavily invested and much more inclined to protect and defend Ukraine because we have a lot of economic and military interests in Ukraine. And President Trump recognizes that. But apparently Volodymyr Zelensky does not recognize that. Volod? I'm still working on refining that, seeing where that's going. And the left, they're out in full force saying crazy stuff all weekend long from members of the Senate. Oh, he's a Putin. He's a Putin. I got to tell you, the more Democrats scream out loud, the more I think they're in bed with Putin. The way that they've been mismanaging and lying about this whole thing. They lie pretty constantly. But so Zelensky says, we're ready to sign the minerals agreement. Day late, dollar short. And it will be the first step towards security guarantees. This is what he wrote, period, end of sentence. Security guarantees. He thinks we owe him something. We owe you eternal security guarantees, a NATO membership, and NATO has been encroaching on Russian, former Soviet territory ever since we promised Russia that we wouldn't start closing the noose, tightening the noose on Russia. We've been tightening the noose on Russia in violation of an agreement that we made, but never mind that. That's okay because a lot of people are making money off it, buying lake houses. Where do they buy those lake houses? Oh, yeah, Deep Creek Lake. They buy them at Deep Creek Lake, places like that. So he said, we're ready to sign the minerals agreement, and it will be the first step towards security guarantees, because he's assuming that Trump and the United States are going to provide him with security guarantees in perpetuity. And we, price is no cost. You just tell us what you want. He continues, but it's not enough. This is what he said. Security guarantees, but it's not enough. And we need more than just that. A ceasefire without security guarantees is dangerous for Ukraine. You know what? Not a ceasefire is dangerous for Ukraine. Maybe you should think about that for a minute. You dim-witted Eastern European numbskull. You've got a skull thicker than a brontosaurus. What is the matter with you? He said, a ceasefire without security guarantees, again, we must commit blood and fortune. Otherwise, it's not enough for him. You're not in the driver's seat here, pal. As President Trump said on Friday, you don't have the cards. And he's like, I'm not playing cards. It's a metaphor, moron. Maybe you should get a translator because your brain isn't among the best of brains. A ceasefire without security guarantees is dangerous for Ukraine. We've been fighting for 3 years. Yeah, I know. We've been paying for it and in the middle of it. And now President Trump's trying to stop the 3 years of fighting and the killing. But you don't seem too interested in that, do you? We've been fighting for 3 years, and Ukrainian people need to know that America is on our side. And unless they get security guarantees in perpetuity, he will determine that that the U.S. is not on their side. But that's a lot of hooey. And I'm just keeping it clean there because I got to tell you. So I'm going to get into this big time, obviously. Also, a fuel giant, an oil and gas company in Norway, bans sales to U.S. forces after Trump-Zelensky clash. Now, to their credit, the Norwegian government stepped up and said, shut up, calm down. Oil company doesn't speak for us. We're good. But in the meantime, maybe we should just tell Putin that Norway is his for the taking. Just go ahead and take it. Just, the oil and gas, go ahead and, because he'd take it in an afternoon. It's Norway. No big deal. I'm being mostly tongue-in-cheek, but I'm a little tired of these presumptuous, arrogant, self-righteous, lazy Europeans just sitting back, tossing bonbons in the back of their throat every day. Well, and what are they sipping, not-so-fussy Chardonnays? While we stand in the Fulda Gap generation after generation holding the Soviet bear at bay, well, we hold them at bay on the Korean Peninsula and in Vietnam and in Central America and the commies spreading their totalitarianism, while the Europeans you know, they eat little French chicken dishes and they assume that we'll take care of everything for them. President Trump is stepping up for us on our behalf, the news media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, boy, I've got a lot of their stuff for you today. You'll believe some of it. Some you might find to be almost unbelievable. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Based on the Obama standard, Trump should already have the Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe twice by now. The Abraham Accords, Nobel Peace Prize. Doing everything they can to stop the war, Russia-Ukraine. The Democrats just want to fund the war. They're obviously making money somewhere in the military-industrial complex operation there. You got that. I've got border news for you and the radical Hakeem Jeffries. He hates the world. Let's go to the telephones right now. Let's go to Stephen calling from Centerville, Virginia. Stephen, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for taking my call. Don't know if you happened to catch it on CNN this weekend. Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army retired Evgeny Vindman, who was once offered the position of Defense Minister of Ukraine while a active duty U.S. Army officer, was quite offended by J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance's audacity in questioning Volodya, that's what we're calling him now, in the Oval Office on Friday. Did you happen to catch that?
I did not, but I'm glad you pointed it out. I saw that, he was born in the USSR along with his crooked brother, this treasonous brother that betrayed President Trump, the commander-in-chief, and undermined him and violated national security rules, a presidential phone call, because he had a political agenda. So he's a treacherous, treasonous Ukrainian Soviet who's not on our side. Yeah, I don't like either of the Vindman brothers, but the Democrats then ran Alexander Vindman's brother that you're talking about for Congress, and now he's a member of the House of Representatives. And I saw that he was on MSDNC this morning, too, the Vindman Soviet.
So he, and it may have actually been Alexander who was on CNN yesterday as well.
Oh,
he
okay.
Been making the rounds.
Okay.
And he demanded that J.D. Vance resign.
Oh.
And I would just observe that the Vindmans were not granted pardons by the outgoing Biden administration, and I'm not sure that any of them, neither the brothers nor the ratchet wife, are in much of a position to demand anything from this administration.
I'm with you. Well, that was a great call from Stephen. There are two Vindman brothers. They're twin brothers. Eugene Vindman is the Soviet-born Ukrainian that the Democrats got into the House of Representatives. I wonder if, it reminds me of Democrats having affairs with Fang Fang, like Eric Swalwell from the Chinese intelligence services. But, yeah, Eugene Vindman, Soviet-born twin brother of Alexander Vindman, who was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, betrayed his president, the commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, ambushed him, set him up, violated the law. The news media applauded it. The Justice Department didn't lift a finger about it. And Stephen was asking, I wonder if the statutes of limitations have expired on this kind of conduct by an Army officer. President Trump made a phone call asking about the corruption of the Biden family. We now know, of course, with certainty that they took millions of dollars from Ukraine from a Ukrainian gas company, Burisma, for a no-show job for Hunter Biden, just shy of $1 million per year for nothing. It's good to be a Democrat, isn't it? Because that'd be kind of a big deal, I think, if, and Eugene Vindman, member of Congress, you kidding me? And then what is because they're Soviets, the Democrat Party's keeping the Soviet Union alive. They love the Soviet Union. They miss it. I miss the Cold War because there was such great clarity. Now the Democrat Party has become the Soviet Union, in effect, in the United States of America. But Alexander Semyonovich Vindman, 49 years old, born in Kiev, Ukraine, USSR, because that was the Soviet days before Ronald Reagan and America collapsed the slave ship known as the USSR, the Soviet Union. We won, they lost, but then the Democrat Party took over here, so it's still a bit of a mixed bag, I've got to say. Now, let's go to what Stephen was talking about, just to warm things up, because our brilliant and well-informed, our learned caller, Stephen, called in and said, the Vindman, and I guess I assumed it was Alexander, but it wasn't. It was his Soviet-born twin brother. They are twin brothers, born on the same day and all that good stuff, in 1975. But these Vindman brothers, these guys are not the good guys. Boy, are they not the good guys. And so this was Alexander Vindman, who was on CNN, and it turns out it was actually Friday, but then they kept running the video all weekend long because they liked it so much, because he's a treacherous, treasonous betrayer of the commander-in-chief, violated every standing order that a U.S. military officer has tucked away on day one of military service. But on CNN, fake CNN, and they had a bunch of, they had, who was on with it? Pete Seat was on there, a former George W. Bush national security guy, was on CNN. And so it was the 2-on-1, the anchor, and the Soviet-born, anti-American, treacherous, treasonous twin brother of the congressman now. So let's go to this, because Stephen queued us up to it. So and he's this arrogant Soviet-born Ukrainian former army officer. He has demands for the president of the United States, and demands like, he's got 50,000 tanks and 30,000 nuclear weapons like the old Soviet Union. He's still thinking as Soviets think.
The United States of America, the leader, the current leader of this free
J.D.
world.
Vance owes Zelensky
finish.
an apology. President Trump owes Zelensky an apology for the way he was treated.
For what?
I demand it.
I demand it. Sig Heil, meine Schatzi. Put your fur hat and your armband back on. Grab your AK-47, comrade worker. I demand it. I'm sorry, who the hell are you? You're a former disgraced lieutenant colonel, treacherous, treasonous, and you ambushed the commander-in-chief. You lied. You said it led to his impeachment, actually, because the Soviet-born Vindman is the hero of the Democrat Party, of course. Aren't they amazing? Yes, they are. So that is, I demand it. And that's him talking over Pete Seat of the George W. Bush administration, who's trying to make sense. He ambushed. No, if anything, the Soviet-born, he was Soviet-born too, Volodymyr Zelensky, born in the Soviet Union. Just be grateful every day that you walk free for the United States of America. Be grateful every day that there's not a tank parked on your mother's head for the United States of America and for hundreds of billions of dollars. Now he's demanding permanent security guarantees. Really? For how many centuries do we have to provide security guarantees for all of Europe? Just curious. The dang, I'll keep it clean. The dang Europeans, the lazy, presumptuous. Hey, I know we're like Mikey. Mikey will do it. Mikey will do anything. Pretty amazing stuff. How many Americans are there? How many Europeans are there? How many? And why aren't they defending themselves, the Europeans? Just curious. The Polish prime minister weighed in, had some pretty good stuff on that too. But let me get to the second part of this, because Vindman, the treasonous former lieutenant colonel on CNN, with a sane and rational person, Pete Seat, and I got to say, Vindman went in there and ambushed Trump. They had been invited to the White House. I think he walked in with 20 horse holders. Volodymyr Zelensky did to the West Wing of the White House. I counted when I saw them walking in, 20 Ukrainians plus President Volodymyr Zelensky walking into the West Wing of the White House on Friday. Hey, you're welcome. And we got lunch for you over here, too. But he detonated his suicide vest and blew the whole thing up and then walked out in a huff. And then the left, because they're closer to the Soviet Union than they are to Ronald Reagan or even John F. Kennedy when it comes to being America and on America's side. But first he demands an apology. The little Ukrainian dwarf failed comedian can start groveling and sniveling and apologizing now. By the way, it turns out he had killed the deal twice beforehand. There's a story Fox News has. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Zelensky refused mineral deal twice before. Then he went into the Oval Office and blew it up. But this Soviet-born Democrat, disgraced former Army officer, was on CNN.
If you're going to go ahead and say preposterous things like Zelensky owes an apology for being attacked, I'm going to go ahead and say something outrageous. Actually, I'm going to go.
The price of you say that Ukraine wants peace.
I think JD Vance should resign. How about that? We're just going to go throw crazy stuff into the air.
Soviets, the Soviets, they didn't die. They just became Democrats in America. The Soviet Union is the Democrat Party. It morphed. Aren't they amazing?
I demand it.
I demand it. You should probably be in a prison cell for treason, and maybe it's not over. Got to think about that, too. By the way, over the weekend, J.D. Vance went with his family to Vermont for a ski weekend, and there were so many left-wing protesters in this little Vermont town that we had to turn it over to Canada. Now it's part of Canada. It's kind of sad, but maybe they'll raise comedians. The Vance family moved to undisclosed location after hundreds of pro-Ukraine protesters swarmed ski resort ahead of vacation. You know what pro-Ukraine means? Pro-war. Means that you're not for peace. You're not for a ceasefire. You're for never-ending war. You're for fueling and funding the war machine and making sure that many more hundreds of thousands of people are killed. That's what being pro-Ukraine. If you're pro-Ukraine, you'd be pro-ceasefire. If you're and the Democrats are pro-Hamas, too. If you're pro-Hamas, you'd be pro-ceasefire. But the Democrat Party is neither for a ceasefire in Ukraine, nor are they for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, the genocidal death cult called Hamas. Now, the New York Post has a story about the ski resort. Vice President J.D. Vance was forced to move his family to an undisclosed location after hundreds of pro-Ukrainian protesters, pro-war, anti-ceasefire, anti-peace, left-wing radicals, glassy-eyed zombies. It is the zombie apocalypse. The Democrat Party is the zombie apocalypse. So the hundreds of pro-Ukrainian protesters swarmed the Vermont ski resort where they were vacationing on Saturday, just days after his public dust-up with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Actually, if it's Saturday, the dust-up was on Friday. That'd be one day after, but never mind the timeline. Vance and his family were greeted by hundreds of outraged protesters. They're always outraged, and they always have a demand or a list of demands, don't they? And violence is always just behind the curtain. Ask Steve Scalise and Donald Trump, and the list goes on. Vance and his family greeted by hundreds of outraged protesters. They were lining the snow-covered streets while visiting Sugar Bush Resort. Sugar Bush is kind of a funny name, isn't it? It's a Sugar Bush Resort in Wastefield, Vermont. But they were forced to cut their 4-day trip short after seeing the intensity of the protests. Protesters displayed signs labeling Vance a national disgrace because they just want the killing. You know, the left is the party, the Democrat Party now in the United States, the party of never-ending war. They just want never-ending. And I don't know how the Democrat Party has ultimate sway over every one of these glassy-eyed zombies. They just want endless war. President Trump is pushing for a ceasefire, and the Democrats are against it between Ukraine and Russia. President Trump wants the hostages released and Hamas to stop kidnapping, raping, torturing, and murdering. And the Democrats are really with Hamas. They're closer to Hamas than they are to Israel. Me, I'm a charter Zionist. I'm absolutely a complete Zionist. I believe that Israel has a right to exist and everything. Imagine that. Boy, oh boy. And, there are legitimate questions, I think, about why the Europeans can't defend themselves. Why is it the United States has to do everything for the lazy, pasty, unathletic, bonbon-munching Europeans? For how many centuries, how many generations are we going to have to come to the aid of you nitwits and defend you from the bad boys on the block? And can't Germany just invade somebody? Like the old days. I'm kind of a traditionalist. Amazing stuff. All right, now let's get to I'm going to get to President Trump and Zelensky in the Oval Office because there is a lot to cover there. And the media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, lying about it because they love lying and they're not on our side. Let's take another phone call. And then Scout Sounder, after the top of the hour and the news, I'm going to get to the audio from the Oval Office on Friday, and then the Civil War, the party of firing on Fort Sumter, the Democrat Party. They're not democratic at all. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Bob calling from Ashburn, Virginia. Oh, Bob, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
How are you? Good morning, Chris.
Great, Bob. Thank you.
I just wanted to advise you that Colonel Vindman is still under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, even though he is retired. And his brother, as a member of Congress, if they were both involved in the subject in undermining the President of the United States and the United States government, they are subject to charges of treason and deportation.
Well, okay. I gotta tell you, they were born in the USSR and the Ukrainian Soviet Union.
Right. And I'm telling you right now, I would love very much for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to set up a task force to investigate and monitor and decrypt every phone call that Vindman has made and his brother as a member of Congress, because both of those guys can get deported for sedition to the people of the United States for what they did. I was wondering over the weekend, who said Zelensky don't cooperate with President Trump? And whoever the person was that you had on the phone with you earlier this morning hit a nail right on the head. Mm-hmm. Right on the head. And I'm telling you right now, it's a total and absolute disgrace, and there ought to be an investigation started immediately. And I'm talking to you as an investigator, a police officer for over 30 years, retired. I'm telling you, it smells. Who, what, why, when, where, and how, period. Any of those questions get answered, and somebody ought to be going to jail.
Well, you're not going to get any disagreement out of me, Bob. I got to tell you, and I thank you for calling in, and I appreciate your 30 years of experience looking into these matters. Those used to be the rules in newsrooms, too, who, what, when, where, and why, and sometimes how. But we don't have journalists anymore, and I am hopeful that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel can get things done here. I also want to share with you, well, I've got a question for you. Why can't the Europeans defend other Europeans. Got a little math for you on that coming up.
I demand it.
Coming up, I have the Polish Prime Minister for you. He sounds like me. I don't mean the tone of his voice, but what he's saying. Well, his tone is not dissimilar either. I've got that coming up. I've got President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky blew it up. And then the left turns against Trump because he represents our interests, and the left, they don't represent our interests. They very much the opposite. I've got our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who was very strong over the weekend. Tulsi Gabbard. We even had a Lindsey Graham moment on Friday that shocked the world as well. But let's go back to the telephones before I start getting to lots and lots of audio and talking about the madness that the left, from Ukraine and Moscow to the Democratic Party in Washington, the left is the party of World War III and anarchy and civil war. They're just they're not the good guys in this story. Let's go to Corey calling from Pittsburgh, PA. Corey, you're on the Chris Plant Show. Corey, you're on the Chris Plant Show from Pittsburgh, PA.
Chris.
There you are.
Hey, sorry about that. How are you today?
Just great, buddy. Thanks.
Pretty good. Good. I just had to say, at first, and I did a lot of work on the Trump campaign from 2016 up through this last year, all three of them. And, at first, Vance, I was like, he's a good VP candidate, but then, Trump can only do 4. So you start looking at who's going to take the reins. And at first, I wasn't too, excited, I guess would be the right word.
Uh-huh.
But, man, did he show his teeth. And I think that's, why they're attacking him so much and trying to put all this blame on him, is because they know that was a huge, huge moment for his political future.
So you think they're trying to torpedo him because President Trump is in his second term, so he's term limited now with his second term. And J.D. Vance is VP, and he's smart and capable and well-spoken and occasionally ferocious. And you think now they've got to start doing downfield blocking for the Democrat Party and start trying to take out J.D. Vance early.
Yeah. I mean, we finally got to see a little dog from him.
Yeah, I think you're onto them, I've got to say, Corey. You're definitely onto them. That's the Democrat Party's playbook. It's the old Soviet playbook.